Ryan.
Today we are learning basketball with Blake Murphy. He covers the Toronto Raptors and the Blue Jays as an analyst with the Sportsnet, host of Jays Talk Plus, and co-host of the Raptors Show. Excited to really dive into Toronto Raptors, all things, the offseason, the future outlook, what exactly is going on with some of these trades and what the plan is long term, the personnel. We love the talent. How is it going to fit? The big question, but how are you doing today, Blake?
I'm great, man. Excited to do it. Glad we could finally connect. I gotta ask. I'm stealing the show. I'm gonna ask you the question first. The Vincent T-Mac over your left shoulder, is that always there, or is that just when you have like me or S or someone on to talk Raptors?
See, that one's always there. That's the poster. We're repping T-Mac here on the pod more than anything, and it's just a cool pick. We got T-Mac and Vince Carter, cousins, teammates on the Raptors. They're also Orlando Magic legends, so it's kind of like a predestined thing. They're both kind of from Central Florida as well. They both grew up Magic fans, but they both end up in Toronto at first. So it's just a cool moment in NBA history. Love the picture, and I just happen to have the poster, so it stays up behind me. That's the OG. We haven't done much background change. We might, little tease for the viewers. We might have to rearrange the library at some point. I know it's a mess behind me, but that it comes and goes. But the poster stays, man. Nice. We gotta rep T-Mac. He's my favorite player ever. At first it was Shaq growing up, and then T-Mac kind of took the mantle as well growing up here in Orlando. But they're both some of the all-timers. So shout out to the OG Raptors, and shout out as well. We had an awesome conversation back when Vince Carter got his jersey retired back in Toronto. So we got to celebrate that early on the pod. So that was a lot of fun.
I was in Brooklyn on the weekend, and so the Liberty weren't at home, so I didn't get to see a playoff game, but I was in Brooklyn, and I walked past the Nets store, and a friend had told me that the Nets still have some unsold Vince jersey retirement stuff there, but the store was closed when I walked by. But I was totally thinking, if things go south with, if Raptors fans are mad at me for staying on Blue Jays too long or something, I'll troll with some Vince Brooklyn Nets retirement gear, but it was closed when I walked by.
Oh man, that would have been the perfect way to get at the Raptors fans. You got to keep them in check. It's Blue Jays season, playoff season. The playoffs come first when it comes to sports. You gotta prioritize something. But man, the Raptors are in a super interesting place. Before we really hit on them, though, I'd love to hear a little bit more of your background and just any general sports media advice for anyone trying to break into sports media, talk about sports in any capacity, and a little on your journey, your path. What got you interested in this, and what kind of draws you to want to do this sort of lifestyle career.
Yeah, I mean the one is just love sports and talking about sports, writing about sports. That part is pretty straightforward. So my background, I have a business degree. I was headed to law school. I took a year off to save money because I couldn't afford to go yet. And in that time, I was just I had blogged a little bit before in university, but then I started writing. I was like, maybe I like this. So I deferred law school again another year, and then decided to chase this, and kind of gave myself a timeline of okay, if it doesn't work out in X amount of time, I'll go back and have a real job and stuff like that. And things have just worked out in my favor. First year I went freelance full time after being at the Score for a while. Raptors go on the conference final run. First year I'm full time at the Athletic. Raptors win the championship. I'm juggling Jays and Raptors right now, and I might miss the start of Raptors season because the Jays are in first place and could lock up the division this weekend and stuff like that. So I have had a horseshoe up my ass a little bit when it comes to next opportunities and the timing of things. As far as advice, the one thing I'll say is that you have to work hard, and I don't obviously you have to work hard, but there is a little bit of an element of, in a way that we wish it wouldn't be. I wrote a bajillion things for free. I did so much free labor. No one should do that. You should try to work for places that get paid, but there has to be a level of patience with the hard work for stuff to work out, and not just because you have to be patient, but also you need the reps. If you go back and read one of my first blogs, it's oh yeah, this guy read Bill Simmons 2 times and thought he could do it. And then there's an era where it's oh, this guy read Grantland 2 times and thought he could do it. It just takes a long time to figure out your voice, figure out your style, figure out what you like and what you're good at. For me personally, I started out doing all sports, with a really analytics focus, and then became a basketball and Raptors guy the way things went. And now I have a baseball show. So there's some fluidity there where you have to be, I guess agile is the word. Like, you do a video show, you could obviously podcast as an extension of that. You also have the writing in your bag. So I'm being rambly here. So my advice would be to don't be this rambly. But there is the cheesiness of like, you have to work really hard. You have to get a little bit lucky. You're going to have to be patient. And then you have to stay a little versatile versatile, agile, whatever you want to call it. Like, we talked about S a little earlier. Like, he's a great example of that. Like, the guy has 50 part-time jobs in the industry. And at some point, one of them is going to become like, he's going to be very successful in one thing. But what that one thing is not, immediately clear when you're at that stage in your career. So, this is not a great answer because it's just like, understand the grind, Norm Powell, UTG, get in the gym kind of stuff. But that's a big part of it as well. And then also just like, I don't know, I say this because like, I guess it's not self-evident to everyone, but like, people have to like working with you and like want to support you and champion you and stuff like that. So being like a good person and not being an asshole kind of helps. Also, this is one where, S passes the test. Samson Folk doesn't pass the test. He fails it dramatically. I don't know. This is like basic level stuff, but I wish I had like a secret item or something here, but it's pretty much just work hard and be a person people like to be around and work with.
Yeah, I think that's all great advice. Shout out to both of them, man. All y'all do a great job covering the Raptors. Really enjoy your guys' breakdown with the Raptors show, and I totally agree. The versatility, like, you just got to be able to wear many hats in today's age, especially in the sports media side. Like you said, you got to be able to kind of do a little bit of everything, and hopefully, meet the right people that support you and open doors up to give you opportunities to kind of show what you can do. And totally agree. You just have to, be your own promoter, your editor, your podcaster. You got to do. Wear all the hats.
I hate
to get
the
it
promoter
out.
part, man. I hate. The amount I get. Hey, you didn't tweet this thing out that you did. I'm like, you didn't share this on Instagram. I want to post my cat on Instagram and some music. I don't want to post work stuff. But yeah, you got to do that part, unfortunately. And the people who are really good at it, the people who do a better job of me than that, probably expedites it a little bit if you have the like talent and hard work level as well. But I can't give that advice because it'd be hypocritical because I forget to share my stuff constantly.
I feel you. It's something of a grind, and it's a job in of itself to just kind of do all the little things. I don't think viewers really realize how much goes into just recording, editing, uploading, promoting one single show, one single podcast, let alone like every day. It's just a lot of steps that, ideally you get to a point where you can focus on the basketball, focus on the sport, focus on the prep and the content of what you're actually putting out there instead of all the ancillary stuff to make it even come off even better.
Yeah, like one of your listeners is probably like, oh, he did a 40-minute podcast. That's 40 minutes of work. Not knowing like you were DMing me asking if I want certain video clips brought up. You've got a bunch of stats ready. I'm sure you'll have to edit it later. You have to promote it and stuff. So that 45 minutes is really going to end up being like half your day or something like that, if not more. So yeah.
There it is. Now the pods know. We've given the secret sauce out. They know how to make a good old podcast. It might take half your day. Just be prepared for a couple hours of investment. But that's why we're here. We love talking hoops. And the Raptors, shifting gears to this team this offseason, they're super interesting to me because they're one of the teams that have some of the most question marks of any team because I really like a lot of the individual talent. I'm still all in on Scottie Barnes as a franchise cornerstone. Everything we've seen as a prospect for him, from the defensive versatility, the downhill force of nature, the instincts, the athleticism. Like he's just a foul drawing machine, gets the rim at will, great vision as like a point forward type guy. Like I think that team is built around him for the foreseeable future. And then where the questions come in is they draft Collin Murray-Boyles and trade for Brandon Ingram last year. And these are two players that I think do a lot of similar things as Scottie Barnes. So that's kind of my first question is like, what's the game plan just with those three, is it like maybe there's a stagger situation? First of all, have the Raptors actually kind of address this in the media at all? Like, with this is the plan, we're gonna stagger them. We're gonna have CMB learn from Scottie Barnes, and Ingram's gonna be the floor spacer for now and just not be a point forward anymore. Like what's the game plan here?
I mean, that they haven't been as explicit. We obviously ask about Ingram and Murray-Boyles and the fit and stuff like that. We haven't got that technical with Darko yet, and media day is 2 weeks around the corner, so we'll see. My guess would be that, and this comes through when they trade for Ingram and when they draft Collin Murray-Boyles. It's not tactically what the rotation will be, but like the idea is that after trading away Pascal and OG and letting Fred VanVleet walk in free agency, the franchise was at a talent deficit, and this is about getting talent in the door. And you don't get to pick between the 450 players which player is available for Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, and a late first. Like you don't get to be that choosy. So to them, it was, Brandon Ingram is a very talented player, borderline all-star guy. You can get him for what they thought was a good asset cost, get him in the door. Now, you can quibble with the asset cost, you can quibble with the timing of it and the contract extension, certainly. But same idea with Murray-Boyles. They think he's going to be the best player that was available from them in the draft. And while there is a rich irony in Murray-Boyles and Scottie Barnes having some of the same overlap questions that Scottie Barnes and Pascal Siakam had, that's thick. That's there. If he's going to be the best player left of who was there at the draft, I'm a pretty big proponent of the talent will win out. And if you're a good organization, you're well coached, and the players are motivated, you can figure that stuff out. Initially, my guess would be that there is some staggering of particularly Barnes and Ingram, and you can put RJ Barrett in that mix as well, I think, in terms of, are those three guys going to play their 36 minutes all on the floor together? Probably not. You're probably going to have at least one of those guys operate with bench units, not off the bench necessarily, but RJ Barrett, when he was in New York, would come out at like the 5 or 6 minute mark, come back in with the bench and kind of be their go-to scorer. The Raptors used to do it with Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, where they would it'd be one of them and 4 bench guys, for minutes at a time. So there's some ways to do that. And then Murray-Boyles, I just don't know how big the role is going to be initially, where I think he'll probably come off the bench to start. So whether that's 15 minutes, 18 minutes, is he fighting with Jonathan Mobo for minutes? Short term, it's not. His role is just not going to be big enough out of the gate for the fit concerns to be too big. But yeah, long term, and this is not unique to these three, there are fit concerns if you look at everyone on the roster, because the starting unit, as we'd probably projected, isn't super heavy on shooting. They have a bunch of guys who are pretty good offensively and have some defensive shortcomings, or pretty good defensively and have some offensive shortcomings. What does that look like rotation-wise? But I think the biggest thing for this franchise over the last 18 months has been there's not enough talent in the organization, and they have done a good job to improve the talent level. This year is about figuring out the fit and, massaging or seeing, who the odd man out is or how you need to work it.
Yeah, there's a ton of great stuff to hit on there. With CMB, I'll hit on that first. I totally agree. I think they took the best player available. There was a handful that I kind of have in that same tier. Like the very next pick, come on, Mariuach. There's Cedric Coward and Derek Queen, Noah Sengu. And even Thomas Sorber. I kind of had a lot of those guys in the same tier personally, but I had CMB, I think, ahead of all of them. I had him like eighth or ninth on my personal big board. And I know, at least on the Swish Theory side of things, CMB was a fan favorite for the scouting analysts. He was probably the highest rated prospect relative to consensus for anyone. I want to say CMB on the Swish Theory consensus board was probably 3rd overall. That's how high he was for some of the guys over there. And there's a lot of reasons for it, like his defensive instincts, his hand-eye coordination, his downhill athleticism. He has some epic one-on-one matchups from the college level where, sometimes you get the other prospects, sometimes they get you, but he has some high-level ones. I'm trying to remember who it was against. I think it was against Asa Newell, but where he just went to work with his strength and his downhill things. There's best-case scenario potential ceiling comps to, like, a style of play that, like, people have thrown out names like Charles Barkley. They've thrown out Draymond Green as like high level downhill force ideal versions of like the archetype this guy could really like turn into of why you draft him. So totally understand taking him, especially at the 9th pick. Like, we're already kind of out of the star hunting territory by 9, but it's still in the lottery, and this is a really, solid draft in terms of that depth, where there was a solid, a good 5 options at least that are kind of in that tier. So I do. It was a very confusing pick for all the reasons we've talked about, because I think there's so much stock invested in Scottie. But like you said, like you have to find talent. You have to draft talent. And if you don't necessarily love the talent fit elsewhere, like I will say pretty much all the other players in that same range I have with him are also front court center big men that would also probably have some overlap, like a Noah Sengu or a Derek Queen. Like there's a lot of overlap there too, even if it's not the exact same thing. But
and if you're going to overlap, like I get the shooting, the lack of shooting as an overlap weakness is a problem. Like that, 2 of those exacerbate each other, right? Like it's exponential. Yeah. But if you are looking at offensive skills, you're okay with overlapping. Having positional size, passing, and defensive, like good defense that's versatile, like those are the things you can almost never have too much of. So like, yeah, one of those guys probably needs to turn into a shooter, but some of their other redundant like overlaps are like things you're okay with having more of. Like they're almost like having one passer who's good versus having 2 passers who's good. Like it kind of is an exponential thing, I think, when it comes to passing and defensive versatility and stuff like that. So those are skills I'm a little more okay with overlapping. I also was not like in the last era. They had to change direction. They had to trade Siakam and OG Anunoby because they had like run out of time, and for whatever reason there was an evil curse around the team that all those pieces didn't fit, even though individually they were all awesome. But I was never a big believer that like Barnes and Siakam couldn't actually work together, because 2 big skilled forwards who can do a lot of things is like, it's kind of the dream. It's like, yeah, ideally one of these guys could knock down some threes, but like I don't think that the fit there was ever like it didn't work out, but I don't think it means it can never work out, and you can't have 2 big skilled forwards who can pass and defend and have it work out. It's just like one of these guys is going to have to take a step with some ball in the hand or spot up shooting offensive stuff. That's fine. You've got some time to figure it out, especially with CMB.
Yeah, ton of great points there. I totally agree that a lot of what they bring is ancillary skills that like complement each other. So the overlapping, like there's some overlapping stuff that is just negative if you have too much of, and the only one I can think of there is that they probably both like to be in the same part of the floor, like with the ball in their hands, trying to drive downhill. But if one, like you're saying, if we get just one of them to be a little bit of a 3-point floor spacer, then you can have one driving and the other one attacking closeouts a little more often. And to your point, like I think to compare it to like the small ball of the Warriors era, obviously they can get away with Draymond and Iguodala more of a spotty shooter, and a Kevon Looney a big man, because they have 2 of the best shooters ever in the backcourt. So not that every team needs that level of shooting, but I think like if you have a couple of snipers throughout your lineup, you can get away with a little more non-shooters. I think that's what the Magic are hoping for this year with Paolo and Franz, where shooting is not their ideal. Like it's not their strongest skill set either, the 3-point spacing, but they're so talented elsewhere. There's enough to kind of build around it. I think the Celtics kind of solved that aspect because, well, Tatum is like one of the best 3-point shooters in the league, and then Jaylen Brown slowly developed his game to where he's capable as well from there. So they overcame that problem and also had versatility everywhere, 5-out versatility around their 2 big wings. So like I'm with you that like that works in theory with enough spacing and shooting and kind of versatility around it, where they're not kind of stuck into having 2 non-shooters on the floor and also other problems or something like that. But
it's like the Warriors example is interesting because it's like, first of all, okay, Emmanuel Quickley, you have your marching orders. You have to be you have to go out there and become. Sorry, I think we're not supposed to.
Grady Dick and Quickley, the new Stephen Clay. That's all you got to do.
Also, sorry, I think we're not supposed to use the term marching orders anymore. I blipped there, so apologies to anyone for that. But Emmanuel Quickley, you have to become Steph Curry. But to your point, is like you don't need everyone to be like necessarily a 37.5% 3-point shooter, but you need this is an oversimplification, but let's say you need 1,850 points of 3-point shooting on the floor. whether that's a couple guys who shoot 40 and a couple guys who shoot 35, or everyone shoots 37.5. Like, you just have to have X amount of shooting somewhere. So yeah, I mean,
and the volume
yes.
is just as important there, really.
Yeah, and like, and who knows? Maybe like Emmanuel Quickley is a 40% 3-point shooter, and Brandon Ingram actually will take more threes. Like Ingram's a fascinating fit question too, because he is a really good shooter, but he doesn't shoot a ton of threes. And like, he's a good mid-range shooter. When he shoots threes, he's good at them. When you look at his splits on like, these are pull-ups, these are above the break, this is what catch and shoot looks like, it's all really, really good. He just doesn't shoot a lot of them from three. So like, if you can coax that out of him, then maybe you could get a little bit more there with him too.
Yeah, I think Ingram's versatility is a very big theme of this season, because he's one of the most interesting players who seems like he changed his entire game while he was in the NBA, where like at first he was this like versatile big wing scorer, shooter, ISO guy, and then by the time he's in New Orleans with more reps, he's running pick and rolls as like a 6'10" point forward that can like orchestrate the offense. And like, I think that versatility, like, I'm interested, is it a willingness thing? Is it a desire? Is it like a game plan, a mindset that he's just going to be more of a passer? Or is that just how they wanted to use him? Because if he still has that in him, that kind of is the answer for some of this overlap, is he needs to be more off of the ball and more of a 3-point threat, because you have so many guys that can create on the ball and are at their best creating on the ball. Like, that's, if out of those three big wings, Ingram's the one I want spacing the floor for attacking the closeouts more so than the other one, even though he's also a tremendous point forward himself. So, you might lose a little bit of his playmaking as a creator, but at least you still get it as like a secondary closeout attack guy, and you get his floor spacing a little bit, because the stat that stood out prepping here was the defense after they traded for him. There was 32 games or 36 or 31 games or so after the trade for Brandon Ingram on February 6th. Since that, the Raptors had the third best defense in the NBA after that trade. They had 6th in shooting percentage, 3rd in forcing turnovers, 11th in rebounding. And, there's a little randomness after the trade deadline, but, it's something. It's a 30-game sample of Ingram on the team. However, I know there were a lot of injuries this year, so there might be some context to that number. Do you think the identity going forward really will kind of be around this defensive versatility, almost like the Thunder doubling down on defense, even if it costs them a little bit of half-court 3-point shooting and scoring versatility?
To some extent, and that 31-game sample you're talking about, like they had a really light quality of competition as well. Like, it was a lot of the Charlotte Hornets and the Washington Wizards, but they also, like, Brandon Ingram didn't play in any of those games. Scottie Barnes missed a bunch of them just to rest, because they were like, Orlando Robinson and Colin Castleton combined for 1,000 minutes last year. Those guys, like, that was the center rotation when Jakob Poeltl wasn't sitting. So there's a lot to build on there. I think some of it is a little bit, hey, they got the foundation down. They understood how Darko wanted to play. Jacoby Walter improved. Jamal Shedd's obviously a dog. And then at Summer League, they were the most annoying team of all time. Like, whatever the Summer League record is for turnovers forced, they like quadrupled it. So they want to play with that identity, certainly. And I think that's their path to being a good team. Like, I think they're probably hoping, can you get average offensively overall? I think they were 25th last year. So if you can get the average, and then the defense is what kind of determines your ceiling. I don't know that they can go all the way to what it looked like in those last 30 games last year and what it looked like at Summer League, because you are going to start Emmanuel Quickley, Brandon Ingram, and RJ Barrett probably, and neither of those guys are an above-average individual defender. Maybe you can do some stuff system-wise. Maybe some guys come back improved or whatever. I don't know that you could be like a top-5 defense when only 2 of your 5 starters are safely above average defensively, even if you do have Shedd and Walter and Bobo and Murray-Boyles and guys like that available to you off the bench and in transitional units and stuff like that. But I do think, like, the floor is going to be determined by, can Ingram and the growth from Scottie Barnes and those guys help you get to where your offense is about average. And I say about average because you can't have as many nights as the last 2 years where you're down 24 points on the 3-point differential. Like, it's just, the math is so hard in 2025 to play too many games like that. But yeah, the defense is going to determine the ceiling. I think Scottie's an all defense level guy. Jakob Poeltl's solid. And then I'm not ready to say they could be a top 5-ish team. I think back half of the top 10 is a reasonable goal. I just think Barrett, Quickley, and Ingram are too many guys you have to help and scheme around in one unit. And even if you stagger and stuff like that, like those guys are going to play 36 minutes a night. So it's a lot of guys who are a little below average eating up big minutes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's similar to the spacing conversation. It's hard to have 2 non-shooters. It's hard to have 2 non-defenders and like have a defense that gets a lot of stops. So that does add up. But you just try to find that floor balance ultimately between all 5 positions for any given lineup. And that's the goal of the lineup building. With some of the offensive minded guys, with Quickley, RJ Barrett, and throw Gradey Dick in there. Who do you think will be the most important offensive piece this year, the biggest player to maybe swing the season a little bit because of their offensive firepower? Like, does Gradey Dick take a step with his scoring versatility, or does Quickley become like the obvious 3-point shooter guy? Like, do you think is there room or opportunity here for any one of these guys to really pop this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think Quickley kind of has to, because you look at how the starting lineup is going to be structured and where he's going to have the ball in his hands a little less than a traditional point guard, given who else is there. He's the only guy in that unit that is like a proven and reliable spot up catch and shoot guy at volume. So I think that's important. But we also, I think to some degree, know who Emmanuel Quickley is with some certainty. So my answer to that question will be Gradey Dick. This is obviously, third year is obviously huge. You've got that extension conversation coming up next year. And Gradey Dick's been fascinating over 2 years because there have been times where he's never going to be average defensively, but there have been times where it looks like the effort's high enough and the physicality's there that like, okay, he's not getting run off the floor. And then there have been times where he looks like the worst defender in the league. And offensively, there was a 20-game stretch at the start of last year where so many guys were hurt that he had the ball in his hands way more, and he looked awesome, and he was doing a bunch of cool stuff. And then whether the workload or some injury stuff or whatever slowed him down, you look at the end of the season, and he just looked like a guy. The three-point shooting is not – and admittedly, it is a difficult diet, but the three-point shooting is not the level of shooting specialist. And if he's going to be more than just a shooting specialist, some of the other skills have to come around. He's smart. He makes good passing reads. He has a cool knack for tough finishes and stuff like that. But you can't shoot 41% from the floor and 35% from three and be, an average under 2 assists a game and be an offensive only guy. You gotta meet a certain criteria offensively that is higher than that. So I think that he is probably the guy that is facing the most important season in terms of figuring out who he is and where he fits.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think he's like the favorite for this answer of like he's getting paid $32 million, like third highest paid on the roster. It looks like that was kind of my next question, was about the salary cap and the future outlook a little bit. Like this is a very expensive roster for given the product and the amount of wins that are projected. Do you think that financial aspect is going to like put some extra pressure on this season where the team is forced to choose another direction or choose a direction more so than what they're doing now? Or are they just going to kind of keep doing what they've been doing, which is like keep kind of paying a little bit of, in my opinion, they're trying to compete now. Like every move comes back to, we're just trying to stay competitive. You can compare it to the Pacers, the Bulls, that style of that front office style of like, we just want a competitive product on the floor and we're not necessarily worried about the future and the cap that comes with it. Do you think, how do you think like this season, I guess, plays out in terms of the direction and the salary cap of it?
Yeah, the other element to what you just laid out too is not only is it important to put a competitive team on the floor, but you are closer to being great. Like even, I know we talk about treadmill and stuff like that. You don't want to be there for too long where you're good, not great, but you're way closer to being great if you're a good team already and you have depth. Like if you look at before the Raptors won the championship, and a Kawhi trade is probably not going to come along again, but they were a team that had stayed good for a long time. kept some cap flexibility and built depth so that when you were ready to make an all-in trade, it wasn't Kawhi Leonard and nobody else around it. It was Kawhi Leonard as part of an 8 or 9-man rotation, and the Raptors are trying to get back to that a little bit with their draft and develop. The Ingram, like I said, the Ingram and CMB stuff about get talent in the door. From a cap perspective, yeah, you got to figure some stuff out this year. One, you can't be a tax team that is a play-in team. Like it doesn't make sense. It means you've not managed things particularly well. So I think there is going to be a pretty clear edict that we're going to try, and if we're not good, we'll tank is done. They want to be a playoff team, whether that's, fight for the 6th seed in the East or play your way out in the play-in, we'll see. But they want to be in the playoffs. Bigger picture, we just talked about, Quickley and Gradey Dick and his potential extension. There is RJ Barrett, who is, extension eligible come October as well. They have to figure out, fair or otherwise, uncomfortable or otherwise, there is probably someone on this roster who is getting paid right now who's going to be the odd man out. If you are going to make all this work and you're going to be able to pay the next wave of guys on their second deals, on paper in terms of fit and contracts and timing and stuff like that, it looks like it's RJ Barrett who would be a movable piece. Maybe you explore Quickley at some point. I don't know. But this year will be about finding that out as well. And here's a stat for you that is frustrating for me as someone who would like to give you better answers on a show like this. Scottie Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and Jakob Poeltl have been on the roster together since December of a season ago. So over a season and a half. They have played 374 minutes together. They just do not have sample of does this work and how do the pieces fit and who doesn't fit or does fit. And then you're adding Brandon Ingram to that, who has 0 minutes with all of these guys as well. So I think, they want to be good and it'll be important for them to be a playoff team as well. But as someone who keeps a close eye like you do on the cap sheet and what is the next move going to be, in addition to being good, they really got to figure out, who the odd guy out is. And I don't you can never have too many good players, but you can't be locked into being a luxury tax team that wins 45 games. You have to know where that flexibility, where that versatility is coming, where that next move is coming. So I think, it's a pretty important year for that as well.
Yeah, that's a great comparison to just the pre-Kawhi teams and that roster, the very, competitive playoff team, always making the playoffs, maybe not quite viewed as a contender, but because of that flexibility and that competitive culture enough where they're one move away. Once Kawhi becomes available, they make that move, and now they're over the top, and they already had that elite defense and the half-court shot making with a DeRozan and Lowry kind of running the floor, and then you kind of upgrade DeRozan into Kawhi and keep everything else intact. And you can kind of envision that, if you can build the elite defense with a young culture here, competitive culture here, that, you have these big contracts that are also tradable in big deals. And you need a lot of money to make big deals for, say, the first name that pops to mind is if Trae Young becomes disgruntled, now you have a lot of defensive versatility in this front court. Maybe that's a partner that makes sense where you have some young pieces that a Collin Murray-Boyles with a really high value, or a Gradey Dick or Quickley or something where that makes sense. But, it's only possible with big contracts already to make a big trade to match salaries. And beyond just that, depending on how you view yourself as a free agent destination, you don't necessarily get a big benefit by creating a ton of cap space every summer if you're not going to draw in the star to Toronto in what is, generally, I would say it seems like players don't know how much they're going to like Toronto until they get there. It has this negative bias of being, a sport that's predominantly in America, where you think of it as a foreign place, and then they get there and everyone says it's kind of like a big city here, but nicer and cleaner. So you could maybe put some perspective on that of how much players really like just playing in Toronto, because they'll compare it to a New York, but clean.
Yeah. They do like it here, and it's basketball's always an interesting sell, especially when we had the 2016 All-Star game here, because the draw of Toronto is the summer. I like the city year round, but this is May to September. It's hard to beat Toronto. Chicago is probably the closer comp, I think, in terms of what U.S. city I find it most similar to. But yeah, guys usually like it here. On the baseball side as well, the Raptors do a good job of like making sure guys feel like their families are valued and things like that. Like they do the off-court stuff well with guys too. They're unfortunately not willing to give them no-show tree planting jobs, which has cost them a free agent in the past. But yeah, the free agent thing is funny because like a lot of things have changed about Toronto's place in the NBA, the Raptors' place in Canadian sports media and stuff like that. But there is still occasionally a little bit of, from Raptors fans, concern that, it's Toronto and that is still out there, or U.S. fans who dismiss Toronto as no one want to play here. And then you look at the history and like they had cap space one time in the Masai Ujiri era. He was here for 12 years. They were a cap space team once. And obviously that's a decision you make to be an above the cap team and use exceptions and things like that. It's not like they were always, actually capped out. But it is interesting. And I would love to know eventually down the line when Masai is talking about things from his career or whatever, if that was like, that's just the way things lined up. That's the way the NBA was going, where this past offseason, like Brooklyn's the only team with cap space, were they just kind of ahead of the curve on being like, nobody changes teams in free agency really? Or was it born of a little bit of, well, we're way more respected in the league now. Everyone loves Toronto as a summer city. We won a championship, but we're still not sure if we can get free agents. So why prioritize cap space versus going out and trading for Brandon Ingram or trading for Jakob Poeltl? And I'm not saying one is right or wrong. I would be fascinated to know if you could give them the truth serum. Was it a cap related and market related thing, or was there still just like a hint of like, well, I don't know if we could get guys here. DeMarre Carroll is the last time we tried.
That's a great point. I think that core of it is kind of the mindset is that, kind of what's been dubbed pre-agency,
yes.
Where like players pick their teams a little bit before they're free agents. They get it known out there what they want before they're free agents. That like the days of like clearing all your cap space because you have a chance at LeBron and Wade and Bosh and no one knows where anyone's going to go. It just hasn't happened like since then. Like it just doesn't happen that often where that's the entire game plan. I think it is obviously one of many great strategies and like there's only three ways to get players, and it's trading them, signing them, or drafting them. And at the end of the day, if essentially everyone agrees, it's not that like it's a bad market or a small market. It's just, do you have competitive advantage with your market compared to the other 29 teams? And I think most would say it's pretty much the Lakers, a handful of big city like attractions, and then everybody else, it feels like, where like these big attractive cool cities and markets just are viewed differently for whatever reason when it comes to NBA free agency. So I totally do agree. I think like taking advantage of, that going in, so trade for the talent that you want and don't worry as much about creating free agency cap space. What I'm getting at, I think, is that the team can still be flexible and acquire talent in other ways without it necessarily meaning they have to clear cap space every summer. So
yeah,
you're totally right. Where like this team has a loaded payroll. It doesn't mean they have to clear it all tomorrow to make room for next summer's free agency. They just have to stay flexible enough where these players are kind of worth the money they're paying for in terms of becoming a trade asset, so they retain that value. And then, maybe in a year or two, they're just kind of biding their time, building a defensive culture until a star makes it known he wants out, and it works out where the pieces and salaries match up. And, maybe some of those decisions have to come sooner or later because of how big these salaries flatly just are.
Yeah, how big they are, and like, you can do that strategy for now. Can you extend RJ Barrett and still do that? Do you have to turn him into a different contract, like when they kind of turned Norm Powell into Gary Trent? That obviously didn't work out, but that was the same kind of idea. I hate talking about players as assets, but if you look at it like that, like
right when I said it, they're as trade pieces, they have value.
It's what we have to. It's what we have to do if we're going to put the front office hat on. The other thing I will say is like, so I completely understand doing that, and obviously I just laid out the case for it. There is a small window of here's never having cap space, and you're building through trades and stuff like that, and you don't mind giving out contracts and doing free agency. And then there's like, you have done that at a couple turns, so you're like up against the tax constantly and in the apron era. And that's where the Raptors are like bordering up against now, where like the RJ Barrett thing or someone might have to give, like, if you were safely below the tax in the aprons for the next 2-3 years, you could run that strategy for a while and just wait and see who develops and stuff like that, what trades become available. If you're going to be a tax team and a borderline apron team after unlikely bonuses and stuff like that, you can't do that for nearly as long, because the roster building restrictions that come in, what you can do in trade is a little less available to you. And I know all this stuff, but for your audience or whatever,
it's a great point, because
that band between we're over the cap and we're up against the tax is like an important. You have that wiggle room, but you can't use all of it permanently.
Exactly. Like they have the roster and payroll of like a contender that's paying over the top to like go all in this summer, and they're just not quite at that stage. So, that's why the Celtics blew it up a little bit, because of the implications. And to that point, like if you're gonna be a team that lives on trades, you can't really hurt yourself by going over the cap and taking away picks and adding all these restrictions to what trades you can make, if that's one of your main paths of finding this talent. So, you're just going to have to make a tough decision here at some point when these salaries get this high, because you're looking at, 38 million for Barnes and Ingram a piece, 32 for Quickley, 27 for RJ, almost 20 for Podol. I mean, that's over $100 million just for those 5 guys right there, where, maybe if that lineup is contender worthy, then that's worth it. But if it's not, that's where the hard decisions come in. But because of the East, because of everything we've talked about, I'm higher on their defensive versatility this year, and at least high on their like floor, as we're getting at. Like, they just have so much talent, so much defense, that if they stay healthy this time around, like that's a competitive team that has to be just as, if not more competitive than some of these other teams that are in that play-in range. Like say the Bulls or the Hornets, and then you're also looking at the Celtics and Pacers and Sixers coming out, or 2 of them Bucks dealing with some major injuries. So Sixers are a little more healthy at the moment, but the other 3 lost huge stars to injuries for the whole season, leading to all these changes. So it's wide open. Like, if you told me the Raptors are the 7th seed next year, I mean, would that surprise fans? Is that kind of the goal, or is that the ceiling, or you think there's even a ceiling for a little bit higher?
No, I think you could aim even a little higher than that. Like, I think when I did when I went through and kind of, okay, how many wins do I think each team's gonna get, and did the little exercise, I had 44 for the Raptors, which who knows, maybe that's a play-in team this year, but the Pistons were the 6th seed with 44 last year. So maybe that's in range to even avoid the play-in. I do think the goal will be to, like, at a minimum, host the play-in game. I think they want to be that level. I don't think they want to be scrapping for a play-in spot, and they should, based on the things that you lined out there and we've lined out. And I think the other thing too is, even if they do have some, as long as it's not a catastrophic Barnes injury, they're way deeper than they were in years past, like where 2 G League centers aren't going to combine for 1,000 minutes this year, and you're actually going to try and not like it late in the season. So yeah, I think I would peg them for like 44. And that has you in the mix of like 6, 7, 8 in the East, and that's a good spot to be in. That's that's a big jump from 30 wins, but it's also, you added Ingram. You're actually trying. Scottie Barnes will play more, Poeltl will play more, Quickley will play more, and things like that. So I think that's reasonable. I think it's like I think the national market is probably a little lower than them on that. I'm not a better, but like when the Vegas win total over unders came out, they were mid to high 30s, I think, which felt a little low. But yeah, I think it's a reasonable baseline for this team to like compete for a playoff spot, have a 500 record in mind, and aim a little higher. The other thing too that we know over 82 games is, like, if they're an annoying try-hard team that has depth, like, that wins you a couple extra games, because like you don't have the Tuesday night in February letdown that a 65 win team might have, or a veteran team might have. Like, that's worth a couple. It doesn't mean a lot in the playoffs, but it's worth a couple in the regular season.
Yeah, and like, this team has some dogs on the bench. Like, you can roll through and find a solid 9 to 10 man rotation where there might be a couple non-defenders in the starting lineup, but like if on the bench, you got Jonathan Magbo, Oche Agbaji, Jamal Sheed, and Elijah Martin. I wanted to give a shout as well from UF. Like he's shown some defensive intensity there. So like, is there maybe a prospect or a bench guy, one of these names that maybe pops out as one of the biggest, most influential role players, defenders, the energy of the team that the fans and the players kind of rally behind?
Yeah, I mean, I think they want that second unit to have a kind of annoying defensive identity in general. And I think you saw that with how they played in Summer League. And you obviously can't do that it won't be that extreme in the regular season, but the like being so impossible to play against is part of what they want to do. Individually, I will say that I think of the guys last year, and this is one of the nice things about a down year last year is you got to give guys way more opportunities than they would have gotten otherwise. Jacoby Walter is probably the guy that changed my outlook on him the most. The defense was a little further along than I had anticipated, and he improved a lot on that end. Very smart player. I know he didn't shoot particularly well, 40% from the floor and 35% on three, but I like he got a little funk to him, got a little verve on offense. I think the shooting will come along. And yeah, heard rave things about the level of picking things up quickly and buy-in and learning the game kind of stuff. So obviously all those guys had their moments last year, but I think Walter is the one who I upgraded my long-term outlook on him last year more than any of the others. So I'll be really excited to see what he looks like in year two.
For sure, and I didn't even mention CMB. I mean, he'll probably be coming off the bench as well. I mean, that's like a really that's the kind of like LeBron looking over his shoulder and getting upset that Kawhi's checking in, and when you have CMB checking in like on defense,
Scottie
like it's supposed to get a little lighter.
My matchup will get easier. It's like, oh no, here he is again.
Here comes CMB with more energy, ready to go, fully rested off the bench. Well, there's definitely some intrigue here. I'm excited to see how it goes, and I'm with you. I think there's like enough of a high floor of talent where like this is especially in the Open East, like a competitive, like a team that should make the playoffs if everything goes right. And there's definitely, I think, enough defensive personnel to kind of create some units despite some of the concerns here especially in the, given that the concerns are more backcourt centric, there's just, you can make up for it in my mind a little more with front court versatility in the defensive end. And, Podol is really solid. Scottie Barnes is really solid there, a true defensive anchor. And I'm excited to see the how it turns out. I have one last question for you. You hinted at it there. Can you shine any light onto some of the Kawhi free agency rumors? Like, what actually happened? Like, there was a rumor that some of the let's say demands or requests that came out about the Clippers actually happened with the Raptors the first time around, the first time he was a free agent, and the Raptors did not agree to do some of these deals. Is there any truth to some of these rumors? Can you shine any light onto what actually might have happened with Toronto?
Yeah, so Bruce Arthur of the Toronto Star, Michael Grange of Sportsnet, Brian Wolstead of Toronto Sun, Josh Lewinberg of TSN. I think they have all shared little snippets of this or different things. So most of the reporting is theirs. I will say this for myself. I was in Vegas in 2019 when they lost Kawhi, and there was a lot of chatter around those arenas about some of the outlandish things that Uncle Dennis had asked for. Now, my read at the time, trying to sort through all this stuff, was maybe you ask for all that stuff so that you can say, well, they didn't meet our demands because the Raptors were offering more money. And I don't know, maybe there's some way of justifying leaving a better basketball situation. We're all pretty certain, I think we've all reported or said some version of the same thing, that they were strong-arming a Paul George trade even if he came back. And that was going to make the championship run at back roster look fundamentally different. Obviously, the cost on that the Clippers ended up paying was very, very high. I do not have the reporting that Bruce Arthur and Grange and the others have in terms of specific Uncle Dennis asks, other than that I had heard it was an open conversation around Vegas that summer that some of the asks were ridiculous. And some of the asks were like quite literally impossible. Like, you cannot, also, first of all, this is Canada and it's the same ownership group that owns the Leafs, that owns the Raptors. You cannot ask for an ownership stake of the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's not, forget the cap circumvention stuff. That is just like logistically not possible. That's not, you don't know how, like, they're not publicly traded shares of, well, I guess now there will be. But yeah, you can't just break off a piece of the Toronto Maple Leafs for an ask. So anyway, all that to say is it was pretty openly talked about that some of the asks were ridiculous. At that point, it was not, no one was like, oh, they're circumventing the cap and doing X, Y, Z. It's just the ancillary, can you grease the palms of the people around him stuff was out there. And it was silly at the time. And now it looks actually much more insidious than it felt at the time in 2019. In 2019, it just seemed like, well, this is weird. He was always going to the Clippers, so I guess they're just throwing stuff out there to see what they could get. Now it's like, oh no, you were fully canvassing people to circumvent the cap. So now it looks way worse than it felt in 2019.
That's wild. We can only hope a little photo op of Kawhi planting some trees comes out, some pro world saving nature pics to save his reputation, so we can at least say he did plant some trees out of this. Some good was done. That's all we can hope for. It's wild to see it play out. I'm definitely interested to see obviously what happens from all of these allegations and if Kawhi will still be a Clipper in this season. Honestly, like I have some questions. Like I don't know how heavy this punishment is gonna get, but I don't necessarily think they'll go that far. But I think it's on the table depending on how much keeps coming up about circumventing the cap.
Yeah, I will say this from the Raptors' perspective, like you would hope they get punished for league purposes. From the Raptors are aggrieved in 2019. Like Kawhi getting his contract voided now does nothing for the Toronto Raptors, and like it's not as if like if the Clippers get stripped of picks, they go to the Raptors. They just disappear. So there is no part of this that will make Raptors fans feel better, other than like a little bit of haha to Steve Ballmer.
Some vengeance.
Yeah, nothing is going to make up for the fact that I fairly strongly believe the Raptors repeat as champions if he comes back. Like, that team was really good. The pandemic stuff happened. They still took the Celtics to 7 with not everyone playing their best. And, like, then you add Kawhi to that. I don't know. There's nothing you could give the Raptors or punish the Clippers that makes the what if feel better of, yeah, well, you probably repeat. You can't fix that.
Man. Yeah, you can't take away like you were the favorite of, and you just won, and you built this like perfect defense pace team combination of Lowry to Siakam. Because I mean, they were really Kawhi got a lot of credit for how great that team was already. Like he got a lot of credit for the championship. I mean, that was just a great playoff team, like you said, that had built the defensive culture too, and had some exciting things, and was still a very competitive team post Kawhi. And it's pretty hard to lose that type of an asset or like player for nothing. So like you say, it's hard to make it up to Raptors fans.
Yeah.
Maybe like Batman, just a little vengeance is all they're really after. But I don't know. I think ultimately the league will probably, like, if they can prove that the cap was circumvented, then the penalties will be pretty bad for the Clippers. And if it's more so just circumstantial, maybe it's more of a slap on the wrist with some picks and fines that they can probably handle and still contend next year without it really, just kind of blow over, I think. But something you would think is going to come down here. But, this is super interesting. I can't wait to see how Toronto looks next year.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add on the Kawhi thing is if the Clippers get fined, I think the money should go to me personally because I didn't get to cover a second championship.
Damages.
The career arc, I mentioned all the good fortune and timing on it. The career arc, if I get to cover back-to-back champions, the book deals, I'm kidding. But, yeah, the money should go to
emotional fatigue.
Yes.
They don't understand what they have put you and all Raptors fans through, but you specifically. I mean, think of
money
the
to me, Steve Ballmer. That's the That's the outcome that we need here.
That's the outcome we're waiting for. We'll see how Adam Silver divvies it up.
Yeah.
I'm sure
I'll break you
his
off a
people.
piece if that happens because of this podcast.
Hey. I like it, man. I like it. And thanks for taking the time today, Blake.
Of course,
it's been a lot of fun talking hoops, talking Raptors, and definitely interested to see maybe we got a little playoff matchup here in the future. We might get to see a little Magic Raptors. That'd be a fun time with some of the parallels to their team building, their front offices in the past. Super interesting. But I can't wait. Been a Scottie Barnes fan since day one. Loved him at Florida State. I'm a little biased. I went there, but I got to see a lot of his games and watched a lot of his film. And dude's a monster, just downhill monster. I always remember the one that stands out. He had a game-winning Euro step floater at Florida State where you could just tell there was a little something there. It was a clutch moment, super tough shot with some like touch at the rim, and it was like, oh man, I still to this day, like if there's anyone in the league that has a little Giannis to their game that could pop, it's still Scottie Barnes to me. So we'll see.
Hope you're right. Would love to see it, man.
No doubt. Well, thanks a lot, man. It's been a lot of fun. Have a good one. Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.